Alrighty, you take a look at the final chapter in the textbook. It's chapter 14. It's based upon number, whether you use a word form of the number or whether you use a figure form of the number. And there's a really good summary at the end of this particular chapter to kind of bring this all to fruition, everything that we talked about in chapters 1 through 14. But this is specifically about numbers, and this pretest right here identifies the major points throughout this chapter. The first part is USAA announced on January 27th that 27,000 employees would be paid an average bonus of $93.50 for outstanding work performed in 2014. There's several components that are problematic with this particular question. The first one is in business writing. Whenever a date is associated with a month and it comes after the month, then it's always a figure form and never any ordinal additions of TH or ST at the end of that particular number. So this should be January 27 as it's illustrated right there. And then as far as the number of employees, the basic rule in numbers, which has many exceptions to the rule, by the way, but the basic rule is 1 to 10 is written out as a word. And then numbers 11 through infinity, those numbers are written out as figures. So with that being the basic rule, now remembering that we have a plethora of exceptions to that rule. But with 27,000 employees, the thousands needs to be separated with a comma. So it's 27, 000 employees would be paid an average bonus of $9, $9, $350 for outstanding work performed in the year, which does not have a comma in it, so it's 2014. So there's your correction right over there on the right-hand side. Number 2, 1/3 of the world's population, more than 2 million people, use smartphones. Okay, it has two components. One is fractional, and generally if you can move a fraction away from the beginning of a sentence, that's usually best. But with fractions that have two words, one or two words, you generally spell them out as a word, and any number that begins a sentence should be a word to begin with anyway. So it's 1/3 of the, it doesn't, another thing about fractions is if the fraction itself, whenever you convert it to a word, and in this case it's 1/3, if it's used as a noun, then it does not have a hyphen in it. If it's used as an adjective, then you hyphenate it. So this one does not have a hyphen, so it's 1/3 of the world's population, more than 2 million people. Yes, that's a number greater than 10, so typically we would make it a figure. But there's just so many zeros associated with it, so we want to keep the number as a figure and then just use the word million. That would be beginning with million. No, well, you wouldn't use that with 1,000, but you'd begin with a million, a billion, trillion, and so on by spelling it out as illustrated right there. Okay, then number 3, according to Cisco, 61% of smartphone app users have a better opinion of brand when it offers a good mobile experience. All fractional amounts in business documentation should never use the percent sign, but you should always have a figure, whether it's 1% or 1,000%, that appears before the word percent. So 61 space and then the word percent. Then number 4, please plan to attend the first informational meeting on April 23rd at 10 a.m. to learn how our company can use location-based apps such as Swarm and Point. Haven't heard of that particular app. But ordinals that are fewer than 2 words are generally spelled out as words. So we're going to spell first F-I-R-S-T, informational meeting on April. Since we have the date associated with the month and it comes after, we're going to get rid of the RD and just say April 23. And then as far as 10 is concerned, we're going to use a figure when it's associated with AM or PM. Always use a figure if it's associated with AM or PM. Now if you have o'clock for the time, then it's optional as to whether you use a figure or a word before it. Okay, then number 5, when Mallory reached 17 years of age, she applied to 3 colleges in 2 states. Okay, the first part, this is a little bit different. In fact, you probably will question this particular rule. As far as ages are concerned, the only time that you use a figure if it's a specific number, like 17 years, 8 months, and 31 days. That'd be an extra month. How about 18 days? Whenever it's a specific value of months, days, and years. That's whenever you use figures only. Otherwise, and also if it's legal, if it's being used as a legal date, then it's a figure. All of the times it should be spelled out as a word if it's 2 or fewer words. Well, 17 is only 1 word, so we can spell it out, 17, S-E-V-E-N-T-E-E-N, years of age. Oh, and the other time that you use the figure is if you put John, comma, 17, attended his first concert. Okay, so if the age appears immediately after the person's name as in a positive, then it is a figure. So whenever it's in a legal document or in a legal reference, for example, the legal driving age, then it would be a figure, and whenever it's a specific amount of time with the months and the days associated with it, then it will be a figure. But if it's 2 or fewer words, then it's spelled out as a word, as it is in this particular case. And then we have 3 colleges in 2 states. Both those numbers are generic terms, and they're below 10, so they should be spelled out as words. 3, T-H-R-E-E, and 2, T-W-O, states. Please take $24.50 to purchase 49-cent stamps at the post office. Okay, with numbers, dollar amounts, and whatnot, if you have a value of $1 or less, actually less than $1, not $1 or less, but less than $1, then you use it as a figure and then the word cents, unless it's associated with a group of other numbers that are greater than $1. Then you keep it consistent. And we'll look at that in the chapter a little bit more specifically. So this one right here is $24. We're going to get rid of the word dollars and put a dollar sign before the 24, period, 50, as illustrated right there. And then you have 2 numbers next to each other. The first number, if it's 2 or fewer words, then it should be spelled out as a word. But if it's that's right. If it's the first number should always be spelled out as a word, and then the second number should be a figure, and that first number spelled out as a word if it's 2 or fewer words. If it's more than 2 words, then you can use 2 figures next to each other. So this is going to be 50, F-I-F-T-Y, and then 49 is a figure, and then the word cent, stamps at the post office. Okay, then number 7, of the 39 students who took the app design class on October 22nd, only 2 scored lower than 70 on the final project. So 39 is a number that's greater than 10, so we're going to use it as a figure. And then the date is October 22 because it's associated with a month. So there's 39 and October 22. Now, the number, only 2 of those students scored lower than 70 on the final project. So typically 1 to 10 is written out as a word, so why is that an issue? That 2 is related to the 39 students, 2 of those 39 students. Since 39 trumps, is using a figure and it trumps, and it's the main one that we're referring, the 2 are out of that particular group of numbers, we're going to use a consistency rule and follow that 39, to keep it consistent, we're going to use 2 students out of that 39 and use a figure instead of a word. So 2 of those 39 students with a number 2, figure 2, scored lower than 70. Scores are always a value, a figure. 70 on the test. There's your answer right there. And the art treasure measures only 9 inches by 12 inches, but it is said to be worth nearly $3 million. There's two aspects. Measurements should be figures. And in business writing, you're going to use the words inches or pounds and so on and so forth. So it'd be 3 with a figure, and then actually they did 3 by 12 inches, so 3 by, they didn't use an X, but 3 by 12, and then the word inches, and then $3 million has a dollar sign with a 3 figure, and then million, and the dollar sign represents the word dollars. Okay, then number 9, push that up a little bit. His childhood home is located at 1 Broad Street in Potsdam, New York. And whenever you have a number at the very beginning of a street address, the number that's in, like, I guess, well, in this particular example, 1 is the only number that's spelled out as a word. 1 is the only number that's spelled out as a word, so it's O-N-E with a capital O, 1 Broad Street in Potsdam, New York. We'll look at that a little bit more specifically. All the other numbers above 1 are used as figures, and then we'll apply ordinals to those a little bit later as well. Then by 2020, with no commas in it, since it's a year, nearly 65%, we're going to use the word percent and keep the figure associated with percent, 65 space, and then the word percent. Expect to make payments using their smartphones, which means that approximately 211 million people, instead of using all those zeros, just say 211 as a figure, and then the word million, will be carrying mobile wallets. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at the chapter. And the very first item is the main rule. 1 to 10 are words, and 11 and greater are figures, as illustrated right there. Has 5 private dining rooms and 1 outdoor garden room. Those are consistent too. Of 32 IPOs, that's a number greater than 10, and so it's a figure. Only 13 of those 32 resulted in a positive return to investors. Okay, then the next section, when numbers that begin sentences, rephrase it if you can, but if it's awkward for you to do so, then make sure that the word is, the number is spelled out as a word. 15 community colleges in California were approved to offer bachelor's degree, but if it's a really long number, definitely reword it. So you wouldn't say 113 complaints related to social media. You wouldn't begin there. You say a total of 113 complaints and make it a figure. Okay, commas go in numbers in the thousands, as illustrated here. Hyphenating numbers 21 through 99 should be hyphenated. 74 people and 56 stocks. Money, sums of $1 or greater is considered to be a figure. Okay, so many large U.S. airlines now charge $25. Don't put a space in between. To check one bag, $35 to check a second. Don't add the word dollar to it. And also, whenever you have items that don't have a decimal amount, leave them off unless it violates consistency rules. So $25, $35, and 100. No decimal point, since there's not a decimal number in any of those values. But look at this one right here. This statement shows purchases of $7.13, $10, $43.50, and $90 and $262.78. The only thing I would do differently here is, since, yes, $10 is written fine in this particular case, but there is a decimal value that's in the item in the series. So I would go ahead and add the decimal point to make it relate to the decimals that's already mentioned. 713, comma, 10.00, 43.50, and 90.00. The book says don't do that, but it looks very awkward and I cannot move forward from that. Fortunately, in your testing, you're not going to be challenged in that area. Okay, then finally, let's see. Oh, sums of $1 is written as a figure associated with the word cents, unless it's in an item of the series. You have something that's typically 99 cents. But if it's in this, if this were an item in the series, then you would go $0.99 to indicate 99 cents. I believe they did that on this one. It costs about 8 cents. 8 is a figure, and then the word cents to produce 1 nickel, and about 1.7 cents to produce 1 penny. Our petty cash statement showed purchases of, there's your 99 cents right there, and it's just $, $99. And then I would probably go ahead and put 1.00 right there, and 0.4 just to keep them consistent with each other. Although the book says it's fine to do it like that as well. And then for every $10 with no period and decimal point, since you don't have any others that are in that same category, they're unrelated from the other numbers there, you can spend on our website. We will donate 50 cents to Special Olympics, and that kind of keeps it in a business sense by doing it that way. Okay, whenever you're dealing with different denominations of money from different countries, then for the US dollar, you would put US dollar and then the number right next to it, 10,000. Then the pound right before its value of 6,585 pounds, associated with the appropriate sign from the country that you're dealing with. Dates. Okay, the date is May 17, 1792. In regular business format, you have the month and then the day of the month with no first, second, third, or 17th with a TH, nothing like that. The only time that you use 17th is if that number stands alone, if I said the 17th of the month, or if I said the 17th of June, as they did right down here on the 8th of June. When it comes before the month, then you may add the TH to it. On the 8th, 8th of June, and again on the 23rd of June is what that means. Seattle experienced record rainfall. Okay, let's see. And then there's other formats. The general date format is January space 1, 2014. And then in military time, this is on 17 December 2014. Business is what in business we use the general date format. Clock time, AM and PM, use a figure before it. The first shift starts at 8 a.m., 8 period, M period, in lowercase letters, not uppercase. And the second at 3:30 p.m. Okay, then you may refer to a value before the word noon or midnight. And then the alternative is to use o'clock. If you use the o'clock, then you can use a figure, or you can use it as a word. In the example that they have, UPS delivers packages to our office by 10 o'clock, TEN o'clock, or the value of 10 each morning. The freeway is backed up as early as 3 o'clock, or 3 as a figure in the afternoon and weekdays. So that's a little bit optional there. And then addresses. All numbers above 1 are written as figures. So they have 27321 Van Nuys Boulevard. The number that comes before the street, it's above 1, so it's a figure. 5 is above 1, so it is a figure. 5 Sierra Drive. But 1, only 1, is written out as a word. 221 Baker Street, Post Office Box 8935, Rural Route 19, all of those are figures. Now street names, on the other hand, are spelled as words up to 10, and then after 10, then it is a figure. Oklahoma City does not, whenever you drive down the streets in Oklahoma City, they don't apply that principle to their streets because there's so many of them, where they have to duplicate that sign over and over and over again. So they use figures on all of them. In Edmond, on the other hand, whenever you're on the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th streets, those words are spelled out as words all the way to 10th Street. Then at 11th, it becomes a figure. So here we have 201 3rd Street, 1st through 10th will be a word. And then 2320 West 22nd, it's above 10, so it's a figure. 1190 54th Street, street number is a figure when it's above 10. South 103rd Avenue. Telephone numbers can be expressed multiple ways. You can hyphenate to separate the prefix from the number. This is my favorite, and this is my preferred method in business writing, is to place the area code in parentheses, space, and then the prefix, hyphen, number, comma, space, extension with a capital extension, period, 244. Another way is the area code or the toll-free number, 800. It doesn't have to be in parentheses, but you then could immediately put a hyphen after it to separate it from the prefix, then another hyphen to separate it from the actual number. Or you could use periods, 415 period 937.5594. Company and product names, there's no rhyme, rule, or reason for the numbers that are associated with it. There's a company called Below 5. It's spelled out as F-I-V-E. And then Saks Fifth Avenue, Motel 6, 24-Hour Fitness, Six Flags, 7-Eleven. It's not, is 7-Eleven up there? I don't see 7-Eleven.
They do both, I think.
Yeah, I was thinking that I was trying to remember the last time I drove through a 7-Eleven.
It's 7 and then they spell out 11, so I guess the rules
Yeah.
backwards, right?
It kind of,
Yeah.
I think they kind of mess with you a little bit right there. I was thinking that they spelled out something in 7-Eleven, but 7 is a figure, isn't it?
Right.
And then 11 is a lowercase E-L-E-V-E-N. Yeah. But just follow with, because what they're doing is branding. So it's really not about capitalization or using numbers 1 through 10 as words and numbers 11 through greater as figures. Has nothing to do with that. They want you to remember something, and you can easily remember Motel 6 based upon this. And you know what it looks like, and that's part of their branding that they're using. So that's more of marketing than it is anything else. I'm sure 7-Eleven wouldn't be happy that I just go, well, I really can't remember. They want me to remember. Okay, again, the general rule, 1 to 10 is a word, 11 and greater is a figure, unless it's a related number that we looked at in the pretest. Remember that example? So we have only 4 employees out of 115 missed the new CEO's keynote address. Okay, 115 is clearly the one number that we're relating this to, and it's clearly above 10, so it's a figure. But only 4 of that 115, which would typically be a word, since that number is related to that 115, keep them consistent and change that to a figure. So only 4 as a figure out of the 115, which should automatically be a figure, missed the new CEO's keynote address. Let's see. Okay, here's items, pizzas, salads, and cakes. And 4 is clearly a number that's 1 to 10 and should be spelled out as a word. But since they're talking about the order, everything's appearing in a series. Anything that's in a series is always considered to be related to each other. So 15 pizzas, 12 salads, and then make 4 a figure to keep those items in a series consistent. Unrelated numbers within the same sentence are written as words or figures according to the general guidelines presented earlier. Therefore, let's look at that section. Okay, 23 contract changes will be discussed by 89 employees working in 8 departments. There are 3 numbers that we're looking at in this sentence. The first one, it doesn't make any difference. We're not even going to consider that particular number because it's beginning a sentence. It has to be a word. 21 through 99 is hyphenated, as they did. Then 89 employees, that's above 10, so we're going to use a figure, working in 8 departments. Those 89 employees and that 8 is not coming out of 89. There's 89 employees working in 8 completely different departments. So that's an unrelated number, and 8 is fewer than 10, so it should be spelled out as a word. During the 4 peak traffic hours, 3 bridges carry at least 20,000 cars. Okay, 4 peak traffic hours, 4 would typically be spelled out as a word. 3 bridges, it's under 10, so it'd be spelled out as a word. But the bridges is unrelated to the cars. 3 bridges carry at least 20,000 cars. That's clearly above 10, so it would be a figure. Consecutive numbers. The first number, when you have like 10 49-cent steps, the first number should always be spelled out as a word unless it is more than 2 words. If I said, such as 150 49-cent stamps, 150, 150, that's 3 words. So if I had 150, I'd make it a figure, 150 space, 49-cent stamps. Or they give an example right here, 120 space, 49-cent stamps. But the first word, if it's 2 or fewer words, spell it out, the first word, as a word. So here we have 9 64-gigabyte Samsung Galaxy Note Pro tablets. So the first, we have 9 of them. First word is spelled out. It's 2 or fewer words, along with the figure associated with the second number. 4 25-year periods. First number is spelled out as a word before the number that's spelled out as a figure. And let's see, 5 713 square foot condos. And then here we have 150 60 watt. So that's the only time that we change the word to a figure, whenever it's more than 2 words for the first word. Okay, periods of time. When you're talking about seconds, minutes, days, weeks, months, and years, they're treated as any other number. That is, numbers 10 and below are written in word form. Numbers above 10 are written in figure. So first, 1 to 2 minutes of an interview, it's as a word. It's between 1 and 10. Lasted this many days, it's above 10, so it's a figure. Which is almost 10 years, it's 10 and below, so it's a word. And this next section right here contrasts that a little bit. Whenever those figures are used for special emphasis in expressing business concepts such as discount rates with percentages, then the number before it is always a figure. Contracts, if it's associated with a contract or a warranty period for 90 days, a warranty period for 90 days, or credit terms or loan periods or banking terms or payment terms, then it's always going to be a figure. So the basic warranty, there's the word warranty periods for 3 years or 36,000 miles. Pay your invoice, credit terms, and banking or payment terms within 15 days, use a figure, and receive a 2 and then a word percent. 6 months, use a figure. 3 to 5 year certificates of deposit. Use a figure when it's related to discount, interest, contracts, warranty periods, credit terms, loan periods, banking terms, and payment terms. Now here's the fun one, ages and anniversary. Use a figure only when the person's age is immediately after their name and it's separated as in a positive, separated by commas as in a positive would be. And an example of that one would be Kathy Engelbert, comma, space 50, comma, space. Then you can use a figure when it's a legal document. Although the legal voting age is 18. It's referring to something that's legal, then you use a figure. And then the third time is whenever it's expressed in exact years, months, and days. The child was adopted when he was 3 years, 8 months, and 24 days old. Those are the only 3 times that you use figures for anniversaries or dates or ages. Use words in other examples. When she was 88, Doris Lessing was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature. Use word form for age expressed in 2 or fewer words. Use word form when the age is expressed in 2 or fewer words. If it's more than 2 words, then it can turn into a figure. So at the age of 116, so if it said at the age of 16, then it would be a word. But since it's more than 2 words, 116, that's 3 words, make it a figure. Did you all know that rule? First time I taught this class, that's whenever I learned that rule. It's based on Chicago Manual of Style, and it adheres to the rules specified in the Merriam-Webster Dictionary. So that's where that particular rule goes to. There are some modifications in other documentation. Round numbers are approximations. They may be expressed in word or figure form, although figure form is shorter and easier to comprehend, just for the record. We'll cut approximately 500, so figure is shorter and makes it a little bit easier. For ease of reading, round numbers in the millions, billions, and trillions should be expressed with a combination of figures and words. If 1 million is used as an approximation, use all word form. Otherwise, write this number using figures and words. For example, the figure 1 with the word million, use a combination of figures and words for all other numbers. Okay, $22 trillion, 7.3 billion, almost worth 1.4 billion living in China. Facebook has a mere 1.4 billion active users. Just makes it easier to read with 288 million active Twitter accounts. Next section, numbers with words, abbreviations, and symbols. And notice some of these are capitalized, like Room 318, Option 2, Form 1040, Volume 5, Policy Number, Windows Version 10, Model, Area Code, Highway, Public Law. Those are capitalized. The ones that are not capitalized from the previous chapter are verse, line, paragraph, vitamin, and size. So size 714, page 59. Okay, numbers used with abbreviations also expressed as figures. Apartment 34B, extension 3206, no commas in it. Serial number, capitalized. Account number, capitalized. Fiscal year, capitalized with the year. Social security number, capitalized, and then the number. Okay, then the word number is capitalized when it's used to introduce a word, a number that is. Like it's number 1, best-selling author. You can't abbreviate it, it's fine. Or if you have several numbers, you can say numbers, capital N-O-S period, and then the numbers. Or spell out the word number, 348. Symbols should not be used in business writing, only if they're on invoices or something like that, or where you're actually doing a calculation, or a statistical report. Then you can actually use those figures, or symbols rather. Weights and measures should be figures. So the iPhone 6 Plus measures 6.2 by 3.06 by, notice they're using the words by, 0.28. They put a 0 before this decimal figure because the first number following the decimal point is not a 0. Since it's not a 0, they put a 0 before it as the whole number, 0.28. And that's probably more out of the reason of if you're reading really quickly through a typewritten document, you'll see that 0 first before you see the decimal amount and be able to interpret it as a decimal and not a whole number. So that's probably just to help you read it a little bit easier. Spell out the word ounces, 6.07 ounces. Your flight to Detroit will take 1 hour, 11 minutes in figures. Truck required 21 gallons as a figure of gasoline and 2 quarts as a figure to travel 250 miles. That's weights and measurements, use figures. The hottest temperature ever recorded was 134. Use the word degrees along with the figure and the measurement method, which is Fahrenheit. Okay, here are some other designations for weights and measurements that are used statistically or in an analytical type of report, not in regular business writing. Fractions, simple fractions. Whenever you type it out on a typewriter and you're using the most common ones, such as 1/2 and 3/4, it automatically does this. And that's fine if you're using those particular fractions over and over and over again. But if you have fractions like 5/11ths, that's not one of the ones that auto-corrects in Microsoft Word. And so it would appear like 5, like this. And if that's the case, then you don't want 1/2 and 3/4 next to it. So you're going to have to turn off the autocorrect feature, say 5/11, 1/2, and 3/4, like that, in order to keep it consistent. Okay, so if the simple fraction can be expressed in 2 words, use word form. If the fraction functions as a noun, no hyphen is used. If it functions as an adjective, a hyphen separates its parts. So here it's used as a noun. Almost 1/2, so no hyphen, of the data breaches reported last year were in the healthcare industry. A 2/3 majority, what kind of majority? A 2/3, then spell it out as a word and hyphenate it. Long awkward fractions can be changed, especially if you get into the millionths or a large number, then convert it to a figure and then use the word millionth of an inch. 13/200ths of a second. With mixed fractions, keep those fractions consistent. Here's those that are used automatically in Microsoft Word. It's 21 1/4 inches by 13 1/2 inches by 8 1/4 inches. All of those are consistent and they look good since those are common fractions. But again, if you're using numbers that are not common with 1/4, 3/4, and 5/8 or whatever, just go ahead and separate the whole number from the fractional and then do it like this. Inches wide, not 26 3/8 inches wide. Percentages and decimals. All numbers before the word percent consider to be a figure. Don't use a percent sign in business writing. So it's 5.2% spelled out as a word, but the number is a figure. 52%, figure and then the word. Decimals are expressed with figures. If a decimal does not contain a whole number before the decimal point or does not begin with a zero should be placed before the decimal. That's on the next page. Okay, so we have 0.2 millimeters. Since 2 on the right side of the decimal point does not begin with a 0, then we're going to put a 0 before the decimal point, 0.2 millimeters, just to ensure that it's read as 0.2 of a millimeter. The world's smallest insect is the fairy fly, which has an average length of, here it's 0.020. Since the number immediately following the decimal point is a 0, therefore a 0 is not required to the left of the decimal point, because that number begins with a 0, so it's 0.020, and that would be easily interpreted as 20 tenths, hundredths, thousandths, 21 thousandths of an inch. 2.039 inches. That is interpreted as 39 tenths, hundredths, thousandths, 39 thousandths of an inch. Grade scores and voting results are figures. We scored a 98 with an average of 94.5 in the class. The score was 26 to 23, and it was a 5-4 Supreme Court decision. Ordinals, if it's 2 or fewer words, then spell it out as a word. If it's greater than 2 words, then it becomes a figure. So 75 or 75th anniversary, 18th century, spelled out as a word. Remember 21 to 99 is hyphenated. Ranks first, F-I-R-S-T, not a figure, but a word instead. Okay, the person's age, 30, follows the name, and it's separated with commas, so it's a figure. Was elected to the 21st Congressional District, and it's capitalized since it's part of a specific location. At least the 20 is. And then I think at first as well. And it's hyphenated because it's 21 through 99, and it's 2 words or fewer, 21. So it's spelled out as a word. If it was for the 121st Congressional District, then it would be a figure, 121. Okay, dates. We've already covered that one, but if it says July 20, it's without the TH, it's July 20. But if it comes before or is standalone, then we can put an ordinal with it, which is TH. Streets. Cashman and Wakefield ranked 5th Avenue in New York City as the most expensive retail street in the world. The street name involves a number between 1 and 10. And our headquarters will move to 3589 23rd Street on the 6th of December. The street name, 23rd Street, involves a number greater than 10, and the date is mentioned before the month, so it can be a ordinal of a figure plus a TH. Larger ordinals that are more than 2 words become a figure, the 251st public notification. And that concludes chapter 14. There are a few FAQs in here, and want to hit never use the word dollars whenever you have the dollar sign, and in all business writing you should include the dollar sign, not the word dollars. Let's see. Roman numerals are still used, and if it's being utilized, if you're talking about what Super Bowl number it is, or what World War it happens to be, use the Roman numeral. That's appropriate for you to use, since that's the way it's commonly recognized. The difference between sympathize and empathize. Sympathize is whenever you feel sorry for somebody for something that's going on with them and you have an experience with it. You have sympathy for that individual. But you empathize if you've had the same experience that they have as they're going through that area of grief or disappointment in their lives. Then you have empathy for them. So if you have that same experience, you're empathizing. If you've never had that experience but you feel bad for them, you sympathize. Be careful with the word lose and loose. I hope I don't lose all my money in the stock market, L-O-S-E. But I have loose change in my pocket, L-O-O-S-E. Yes, there is a difference between aid and aid with an E. Aid can be a noun or a verb, but aid, A-I-D-E, can be used only as a noun, and it refers to a person. Please contact one of the aides in the business division lab, meaning an assistant. So AIDE is a person. Okay, conscious and conscience. Conscious is I'm awake and aware of something that's going on. C-O-N-S-C-I-O-U-S. But I don't have a good conscience about what you're asking me to do. My mind, the science of the mind, there's a violation of the science, the chemistry in my mind, so that's conscience. Conscience. That's where it relates to the decisions that you make. I don't have a good conscience. And then I like this very last part. Why does all this matter? Who cares? Oh, I finally got your attention. Who gives a rip about any of this information? It makes you look professional. If you know the value of your numbers and how to use them consistently and be able to articulate those numbers to your clients and your supervisors, your subordinates, whatever the case may be, if you're able to communicate this and effectively write messages to your audience, you will be received much more professionally, and they believe that you have the know, that you're in the know, that you have knowledge, and that you're smart, and that you're competent. Those are the things that that's why we study business English. To make sure that you have a different perception, or people perceive you differently than what they would if you didn't speak correctly in the first place. Just to summarize the entire chapter and the entire semester, one of the things that I would keep in mind as I'm traveling up and down I-40 or I-35 on a daily basis, ODOT will place signs on their digital boards that say, "Please drive safe." That bothers me. You're not going to drive safe. I am a safe driver. I'm going to use the word safe as an adjective. I'm a safe driver. Or whenever they tell me to drive safe, that's not correct. It should be drive safely, because drive is a verb. And adverbs modify verbs, adjectives, and other adverbs. So that word safely is an adverb modifying the verb drive. So I should not drive safe. I should drive safely. So I believe it is important. It makes us look smart. It makes us look like we're intelligent and we're competent, and we have the ability to make a good decision. So that's why I believe this course is one of the more important courses that you will ever have in your college career. Okay, get off your cell phones. Just kidding. Okay, that's all.